Hey everyone, it's Synth Designer back again with another video. Today I'm going to do a follow-up to my other video called How to Start a Chillwave or Chillsynth Song. I know that some of you are big Chillwave and Chillsynth fans out there, and maybe you're looking for some tips on how to kind of continue a song, not just from the very beginning, but how to kind of add certain elements, where to go from just the basics. So I decided to kind of keep working on that track that I started in my other video. Now, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's a pretty in-depth video on how to start a Chillsynth song, so I think you'll find it really helpful if you're into that genre. But I really want to take it kind of a step further here. I didn't quite finish the song yet, but I feel like I'm getting pretty close, and I want to explain some of these elements. So if you don't remember how the song ended on the last video, here's how it goes. And now we're at this point where we have a lot more elements, as you can see, not just the chords and kind of the basic kind of backing elements, but we have kind of multiple drum patterns here. Nothing too complicated as far as the drums go, but just a little bit more to it. Then we have some layers to the leads. I added a Supersaw layer to kind of thicken the sound in parts, some down sweeps and risers, and this little thing that I didn't name yet, it's an ARP here. So we're going to go through all of these extra elements, and of course there's also all the automation to it, and we're going to kind of give it a go here. So starting off, why don't we just play the whole thing, and we're going to just kind of listen to how things progress and how things transform. And then maybe we're going to add some more elements, but I think we're going to just stick with these and go through them. So let's have a listen. And the other thing I should mention is you're going to hear some background noise, which is what we added in the last video. This is just to kind of add some of that atmosphere, and you can hear it now. So here it goes. So there you have it. That's basically what the song is right now. I'm pretty happy with it. I'll probably change up a little bit more. I haven't kind of fine-tuned everything yet, but it's pretty close. You could probably expect this to be released at some point. But let's take a look at what elements are in here and kind of what I've changed up. So what we had before was those pluck chords, of course. That is the starting point for almost every Chillsynth song for me. Then I had this synth, this kind of backing pad, the drums, and the bass. So let's get to and of course the lead as well is what we formed. So let's get to the added new elements, and then we're going to go into the automation afterwards. So with this lead, I'm sure you heard that it's a little bit thicker. So we had this lead before. Now if we played just the one lead on pattern 8, gotta turn the noise back on. So I really like that sound, of course, but I really wanted to thicken it up. On its own, it sounds a little bit weak, and it didn't quite come through the mix like it should. Now, I added 2 little elements here that I felt really complemented the original sound well. And the other thing is they are kind of quieter in the background because they would take over too much if I included them. So let's just hear these 3 elements together. And I'll just solo out kind of the lead for now. And you can hear as well I added some reverb and delay. So let's listen to this version here, just number 2. And then number 3. So what do you notice about those 2 in particular? Number 3, octave higher. It's still up the middle, but it has that kind of upper range. Lead number 2, a little bit more sustained and a lot wider as well. I purposefully made it wider and chose a sound that was wider just because I wanted to fill out a little bit more space. But as you can see, both of these elements are much quieter compared to the original lead. So all 3 together again. And they just fill out the space really nicely. Let's take a look at the actual patterns here. So lead number 2 is here. And this is from Chill Vibes Volume 2, a preset pack that's absolutely free at synthdesigner.com. Oh, actually, this is lead number 3, sorry. As you can see here, it's pretty simple here. It's got this saw wave, but you can see the voices of unison, 1 on each here, and this kind of square saw, a little bit of noise, add some distortion, delay, reverb. Of course, I turn these off because you don't want to double these up. They're already on a verb and delay bus on its own. This one really meant to be kind of that higher upper range, as well as it's got a little bit more of a pop to it, which the other one doesn't, so it kind of gives a little bit more transient information there. And then number 9, pattern number 9 is the other lead. It's called Summer Glow. Again, Synthwave Essentials Volume 4. Go download it if you haven't already. A great sound, a little bit more unison, so it sounds a little bit wider, a little bit bigger. Has that phaser as well, which adds to that kind of width, and chorus as well. So all those things are adding a little bit more width. A nice distortion here, but I doubled the distortion with Isotope Trash as well. You can see it's not all the way up in the mix, but it adds a lot more character to it. So nice kind of complementary sound. Let's just hear all of this in context. That can maybe even be a touch louder. I'm not quite sure. I'll figure all that out after, when I'm really kind of in the final stages of mixing and mastering it all. But for now, I'm pretty happy with it. If I were to just play the first one, obviously it's going to be too quiet, but just keep in mind what you just heard and then how only the first lead sounds. So that's just a great lesson in leads. You don't have to kind of do too much with them. I'm not saying go and replace that first lead, but find sounds that complement it and kind of uplift it a little bit, right? If I were to pick other sounds that were really kind of in your face or really didn't complement that one, it's a little bit of trial and error, then it would really kind of clash with everything. But I felt like in this instance, adding those two sounds, adding that width and kind of a little bit more transient information helped out that first sound. Then we kind of transition into this other part of the song. Now, I don't use too many risers and down sweeps. I try to limit them a little bit, but I feel like in this instance, I'm kind of coming off that high of that lead, and I want to kind of transition to a more mellow part, a different section, right, too. And so I have this down sweep here, and then I have this Supersaw layer coming in, and I felt like those two, that down sweep and Supersaw, really were coming together. So let's just listen to those two parts here, and then kind of pay attention to it all. So there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, the Supersaw does not take over the pluck sounds. The pluck sounds are actually still there. You can hear them. But what I did is opened up this filter cutoff, you can see here, quite a bit, especially towards the end of this bar, and then maintained it throughout this kind of 8-bar region. So if I were to just play pattern 1, you can hear how much more open it is and how much brighter it sounds with that filter cutoff being opened up. The other thing is I played around a little bit with the attack and decay, so just added a little bit more movement. If we were just to kind of listen to this section on its own, I'm going to just play the pluck chords again, but pay attention to kind of the evolving aspect of the synth here. So you can hear it's really kind of moving all over the place just to not make it too static, right? And that's what is the great part about automation. Simple automation here. We have the filter cutoff where we want it, and then we kind of moved around the attack and decay a little bit, just at random essentially. But you can hear that Supersaw as well, complementing those pluck chords. So let's just play it again and then listen to that Supersaw here. Again, with the filter cutoff, I played with it a little bit to add a little bit of variance. And of course, you should really hear that kickstart too coming in, so that sidechain is really pumping things. And I find that's kind of an important part of a lot of Chillsynth songs, just that pumping effect, giving it kind of that rhythm to it. It kind of moves the song in a rhythmic way. Even without the drums, you feel that rhythm pumping through. Then we transition again into a different section. So after this kind of part with the supersaws, I keep them in here, but then I introduce a new element and I start dropping out other elements. So I drop out the drums here. I bring them back for a little bit, and I'll show you what I do here in a moment. But then you don't hear them for a few bars, and then you just have the bass. The bass eventually drops out. So let's pay attention to all the elements in this section here. Then, of course, I go back into the outro there. But what did we notice there? A few things. One thing I didn't mention before is actually when this filter cutoff is open on the pluck chords, I have the volume down quite a bit. This is something I didn't pay attention to maybe a little bit early on in how I produce things. But now I really pay attention to that. Once you open up that filter cutoff, remember that it's going to sound a lot louder, right? So it's going to bring everything, it's going to make it sound way too loud. So at least relative to what you had before, right? So I oftentimes make sure that I lower the volume when I open up the filter cutoff on some plucks. So as you can see here, it's lowered quite a bit, and I keep it here when I bring back in, and I even diminished the filter cutoff as well. You may have heard them kind of in the background there for 4 bars. But the main new section here is this ARP. So let's take a look at that, pattern 13. This is another one from Chill Vibes Volume 2 called Compressed Organ. And it's got that nice kind of noisy effect to it. I kept the stock delay and reverb here that I had. I just felt like it worked. It wasn't clashing with anything, so I didn't feel like adding it to a whole new other bus or anything. As you can see here, we have this basic mini saw and this acid. Really like the sound. It's got that kind of nice sustain to it. Kind of reminiscent of very classic kind of Chillwave and Chillsynth sounds, but also something a little bit different. It's kind of got that organy sound. A lot to do with this acid wave shape here. So let's take a look at the pattern as well. Very simple pattern, but one that I found effective. I found that I didn't want to make it super uniform, so you'll be able to hear it's not quite the exact same rhythm all over the place. Now, the volumes are all the same. That's fine. Sometimes you want it to be really kind of dynamic. Other times this is fine. I made it a little bit more dynamic by not putting every single note on grid. As you can hear, they're kind of a little bit all over the place, which is good. Adds a little bit of that kind of extra human element if you want. And I found that it really complements the other sounds well, and it kind of takes us in a new direction as well. I didn't do much with the automation for this. Kind of kept it uniform while other things moved around. The Supersaw here kind of stabilizes. Actually, I didn't mention the actual Supersaw I used here. Again, let's take a look at it. It's through Serum. This is actually called just Synth Supersaw, very simple. I'm just going to show you how to make it. This is in an upcoming preset pack called Dreamscape Sounds. This will be my biggest preset pack, actually. I hope to release it later this year. I'm not quite sure if it's going to get there. But if you want early access to a lot of the sounds, head over to my Patreon page. And for a couple bucks a month, I give away some extra sounds for my upcoming preset packs. This one will actually be already partially released to my current patrons. However, there's a lot more upcoming sounds from other preset packs I plan on releasing. I release about 10 to 15 sounds a month at least to all my patrons for a couple dollars a month. But in the meantime, let me show you how to create the sound because it's super simple. As you can see here, it's got just a filter here pretty high up, and then two big saw waves here, one with 13, one with 11, and absolutely no effects. So that's how simple it is to create this sound. And it sounds big, and it sounds great, and it sounds really effective when you just want to kind of add a layer. That's really the point of a lot of supersaws too. We kind of forget that supersaws are kind of the fundamental basis in a lot of electronic music, and they can be used in a lot of great ways. And we think of Chillwave or Chillsynth as kind of like a more mellow sound, but if you use the supersaw right, which I feel like I have here, it could be really effective, especially as that layer element and that kind of rhythmic element. What I did here is, you heard it before, changing up kind of that frequency, but I wanted to add a little bit of a different element here. So let's just look at pattern 12, and you might be thinking, how does this relate to that supersaw? Well, this is actually what you would kind of deem a ghost kick. So let's listen. This is the regular pattern as just that 4 on the floor kind of kickstart, but I want something different here. So what I did here was set up another kick, called it the sidechain kick. It really doesn't matter, just get kind of a short, kind of regular kick drum. Don't make it too long or anything like that. And then set up a pattern here. So we have pattern 12. Very simple, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 type of thing. A little bit variation at the end. And then what you can do is sidechain it to whatever layer you want. In this case, the saw layer. I added Fruity Limiter here. And as you'll see in a second, I sidechained it right here. Use the compression function. And very simply added this every single time that kick hits. Every time that kick hits, the saw essentially ducks out of the way. So super simple, cool technique to use to kind of add variation and to change up your rhythms of any sort of layer that you want. In this case, a supersaw layer. And if you're wondering, why don't you hear the kick? Well, that's because it's not attached to the master. So it's only routed to the saw layer, and therefore, since it's even when it's hitting, it's not producing any sound. This very end section here, I kind of brought in the drums slightly early, and then you'll see as I do in other parts of the song, I kind of bring it to a crescendo here and start kind of opening up those filter cutoffs. I opened up the attack more on these pluck chords, and then of course open up the frequency of the bass as well. So just pay attention a little bit to those drums coming a little early just to add a little bit different feel. And then towards the very end of these 8 bars, how much the filter cutoffs are opening. So that's it there. I kind of wanted to show you some of these automation techniques I use as the song progresses. I kind of showed you some new elements here with the ARP and these lead layers as well. The most important thing I would say in Chillsynth songs when you're trying to progress through is add just simple layers. Try to add some different kind of variations of textures. With these supersaws, I didn't change any of the chords. With ARP, I kind of thought about the ARP a little bit more to kind of add some sort of new dynamics. I didn't add anything kind of totally out of left field or anything. They're still based on the chords I used, but the most important thing is automation. Automate things all over the place, experiment. That's where the fun is. Don't get caught up in thinking about what's right and what's wrong. Just start automating and seeing what works. Think about those rhythms and kind of how things work together, and I'm sure you're going to be able to arrange a song in no time as well. Let me know down in the comments what you think of this tutorial. Did I miss anything? Does the song need anything else? What would you like to see in terms of Chillsynth or Chillwave tutorials? Hopefully you really have a good idea now how to kind of start and complete a song, or at least come close to completing a song. If you want to know more about any sort of sound design elements or how I kind of come up with these chords, be sure to check out my other videos on this topic and lots of others, and I'll see you all next time.